G'day Legends, this podcast is going to be in part 1 and part 2 split up, so it's not one long block. And this is for Greg, who was an American soldier who went to Ukraine to fight. He got shot multiple times and has actually broken his foot as well. So thank you, Greg, for coming on. If you like these, and feel free to support me through the links below. And also, I'm always looking for more people involved in this conflict to reach out and come on this podcast. So thanks, Greg, and thank you for you guys for listening. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Well, Greg, mate, thanks for coming on my podcast and having a chat to me. You're currently in Ukraine. You've been fighting there for an extended period of time. I'd just really like to start with what initially got you to going over to Ukraine, and when was that?
Yeah, so man, when things first started kicking off over here, I've been listening to the news and paying attention to what was going on a bit. And when the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan, and just seeing how messed up that situation was, and not really feeling like I had purpose in the States, just I made the decision to come over here. I was about March 5th of last year. I don't know, I came over here planning on signing a contract with International Legion and doing what I could to help. But it wasn't until I got here in country that I really understood my purpose for being here, my purpose for fighting here. It was quite a few selfish reasons coming over here to begin with, and then after getting to know the people and being here, it really kind of opened my eyes to, you know, what I was actually fighting for.
Yeah. And what were those selfish reasons?
I guess I didn't really like my life back in the States. I didn't really feel like I fit in, working a 9 to 5, at a factory or construction. Just didn't feel like I was fulfilling my purpose. And it was a way out of a lot of my responsibilities. I don't know if I had like this grandiose idea to begin with that my name would be remembered. But like, I don't know, it's not like that anymore. Now I'm just here to help. Whatever I can do to help. And sometimes the war requires you to do things that you like to do, and sometimes the war requires you to do things that you don't like to do. You can go from being on an operational team, doing kinetic operations, to putting soup in bowls in a kitchen. It really just depends on the day of the week and where you're working at.
Yeah. And why this war? Why this war over the numerous other conflicts that are taking place?
It's Europe. I was at a point in my life when I was just like, if I don't go for this, if I don't go over there, if I don't go for this, I'm gonna regret it. It's gonna be one of those things where what if I had made the decision to go over there and try and help? I spent a few weeks thinking about it, and I just went for it. Definitely a difficult war to get involved in, pertaining to the language barrier. They use an absolutely different alphabet. There's no similarities in the language, so that was quite difficult. But yeah, I just felt like this is probably going to be the only opportunity I get to get into some real combat.
Yeah. And before this war, what was your experience with what is your military experience?
Yeah, so before this war, I joined the military. The U.S. military was in the Army as an infantryman, and I got messed up about 5 years. So not um nothing too glamorous. Yes, I wouldn't I wouldn't say that my experience before this war really. I think the only benefit from my experience before this war was just the basic training, um, just the basic training that I had. A lot of the groups that I've worked with are Ukrainian. So going on operations with those guys, you they don't even fully have the fundamentals down, let alone getting into more advanced um, CQB, um, L-shaped ambushes, the proper ways of assaulting trench systems. I You're lucky if these guys know how to keep their barrel pointed in a safe direction and their fingers off the trigger. Uh, so the rudimental skill sets that are needed for coming over here has been the most beneficial, because if you're able to use that to try and get these Ukrainian guys that don't have any experience at least some kind of foundation before they go out.
And what was your initial sort of baptized by the flame? Like when did you first step into a combat scenario?
Here in Ukraine,
Yes.
yeah. Oh shit. So definitely the situation that comes to mind was a unit that I was working with in Kharkiv, the 228th. They had asked me and another guy to give them lessons on landmines, booby traps, and bombs. I'm not a sapper or EOD. That's not my field of expertise. They teach you very, very minimal things, just in the military. Uh, so I ended up sitting down in a room with probably 150 guys. All the windows are blown out. It's on the edge of the city, and they're all looking at us like we're going to be able to explain to them how to disarm a bomb. And I'm looking at their commander like, I don't know what the fuck you expect me to do. Just if it looks like a bomb, it probably is. Stay the fuck away from it, flag it, and walk away. Let EOD guys know where it's at. This was, I guess, going back. I can go back because I'm doing a horrible job at this.
You're doing
Um,
fine, mate. You're doing well.
so I had been in Kiev for about a month, the month of April, and I'd been training some Ukrainian units on basic and moving them up to more advanced tactics. When I had a call from a Swedish friend of mine that was on his way to Kharkiv, who said, "Hey, I need another person to come with me. We're going to train this unit, and when they're when they wrote the switch, we're going to train the next unit." And they've been fighting, so they come back for a week or two. We give them training, and then they go back out to fight. That didn't happen. The first day that we got there in Kharkiv, they handed us AKs, 6 magazines, said, "Whatever you need, just let us know. We'll give it to you." That afternoon, this is May 9th, actually, is when I got into Kharkiv. So May Day of last year, and we were expecting a lot of stuff from Russia on that day and that region. And so we got there. They handed us weapons, and then within 20 minutes, they were asking us about EOD stuff. And within 2 hours, we were in front of 150 guys that just came back from the front line. And we were supposed to be giving these guys some kind of ad hoc lesson on bombs. And neither of us had the experience to do so. We absolutely expressed that. And I think it was just more of a confidence builder for the guys. We were told that they were getting ready to go out on an op to the second line, which was in a village that had already been cleared of Russian forces, ground forces. And we had asked me and my Swedish friend to go with them. So within 8 hours of arriving in Kharkiv, we had been handed weapons, gave an ad hoc lesson to these guys, and then we're being asked to go out. That op got canceled that night. First thing in the morning, we get a phone call saying, "Hey, someone's going to be there in 15 minutes to pick you up. How are your kid on? Be ready. We're going out." Within 3 minutes, we had someone knocking on our door, and we're all getting ready as fast as we can, fucking putting on our kit, wiping the crud out of our eyes, and heading out the door. And we meet up in the city center in Kharkiv, and then step off from there. There's like 5 or 6 Vics, I think 2 buses, and so we start convoying to this village. I couldn't tell you the name of it. I couldn't pronounce it. I just horrible at it. But on like the top end of the Kharkiv proper, you got some lakes there and a bunch of villages there that were back and forth for quite a while. We're heading past this blown out bridge. We're on this road that's not much of a road anymore. It's more of artillery holes and then like a winding obstacle course around shrapnel, and Russian helicopter takes out our lead Vic in the convoy.
Oh shit.
It went from everything's cool to oh fuck. We all pull off on the side of the road and then hop out. There was like this little like magazine or like this little shop like right on the edge of this village that was all messed up, but it was still standing. And some of these guys had like dug a hole underneath this building, and so that was like a makeshift bunker that they'd been using. So a bunch of people were like piling into there. And then after that, we got orders to hop into a van. I mean, this is all in a split second. All right, everyone's off the road trying to get out because we're expecting that helicopter to come back around for another smack at us, and that didn't end up happening, thankfully. It was just kind of a one thing and moved on. And then we hopped in a van, drove into a tree line, and I got shelled for about 8 hours straight with no trench systems, waiting for the commander to make a decision on whether or not to pull us out or whether or not to have us push into the village. Mind you, this whole village was apparently supposed to be the second line, so there wasn't supposed to be Russian ground forces in this village. We didn't make it into the village, and I went with my drone operator, and he flew up for recon. There was a few BMPs there, bunch of ground forces there, and they were just chilling in the village. Like artillery was putting work on our positions. Our artillery piece was moving all over the place, and at one point was behind 250 infantry guys in a tree line with no trench system, and decided that was a great area to start firing from. So you send artillery out, artillery comes back. The only KIAs that we had that day were in the first Vic that was hit. I have no idea how, but yeah, that was my first like, oh fuck experience. This is real. And I got separated that day. I got separated from my Swedish friend when I hopped in that van to head to the front line, which I didn't know that's where I was heading. My Swedish friend was not in the Vic with me. It was just me and a bunch of Ukrainian guys. And for a good 4 of those 8 hours, I had no idea where he was. I was thinking that helicopter had circled back around and maybe it got his back, because he just didn't show up. So now I'm with a unit that I've known less than 24 hours. It's not like other units where I'm able to train them and I have an understanding of like kind of where they're at. I have no idea who anyone is. I have no idea what their experience is. And I'm sitting behind a tree, fucking hugging it as artillery is dropping. The physical aspect of war can be tiring. The fucking mental. That 8 hours felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
That was my first real okay, I'm done experience in Ukraine.
Right. So you thought you were done at that point?
Yeah, I didn't see any way of getting out of a tree line with no protection, and there was just wait. There's 250 of us, 250 Ukrainian infantrymen sitting in a tree line, and I'm looking up in the air and I'm seeing a fucking Russian drone flying over my head. Like they obviously knew our position.
Yeah.
They didn't hit us. They had horrible aim. Well, thank God they had horrible aim. They got close, but they missed.
And how did you end up getting out of that situation?
We ended up having, I think, another tracked artillery piece pop up to start giving more support. When that happened, they were able to put a little bit more pressure on the Russian artillery pieces. So Russian artillery slowed down a bit, and Vic by Vic, we ended up pushing out back to the city, flying fucking full force out of there. It was a fucking stupid op, absolutely fucking stupid. We sat in a tree line for 8 hours, just playing with death. Like, hey, how long do I have to sit here before statistically one of those fucking artillery pieces fuck me up? And not speaking the language, not knowing these guys, and not being able to demonstrate that I know what I'm doing, was quite frustrating, because it was like you try and sing, you're screaming at these guys like either we need to move into this fucking village and we need to take this village, or we need to get the fuck out of here. Because like, why are we sitting for 8 hours in a tree line? Why are we allowing our position to get fucking shelled? I don't know, planning just was not on point that day.
And you think it was like an incompetence from the command, or just it sort of just went to shit?
It wasn't the soldiers were smoking cigarettes and eating chocolate, and they just, half of them looked like fucking zombies. These guys emotionally and mentally would just been, these guys had been on several rotations to the front. They'd constantly been fighting. This was just another day at work for them, without proper rest. These guys were looking pretty bad. I think it was command. I don't think the command was a fucking. I think I don't see that at all. I think he was scared. I think he didn't make a call because he was afraid of the consequences on which call he was going to make. I think it was him being kind of just shutting down, I guess, freezing, not knowing what to do, not knowing what the right call was. That's 250 guys to be in charge of. It has to be a difficult fucking call to make. But 8 hours in a fucking tree line isn't the right call either.
Yeah. And then what happened from there?
We got back into the city, so that first stop was failed, essentially. Spent about 3 days training with that rotation. Come to find out, in an open minefield before going back out on more operations. And
So
the idea was for
that minefield.
Yeah, so there's this heavily. It was another one of those situations. There was a really heavily wooded area just on the edge of the city, and in order to keep eyes off of us while we were training, we had been sent there. So this is a good spot, a lot of concealment, and this area had been hit with cluster munitions. So there's a lot of butterflies. There's a lot of unexploded ordnances there, and we didn't know that until about 2 days in, when I started having these guys get online and patrol an area, and but going through patrolling and then getting online, like react to contact, and then advancing through the contact, and that's when this guy that picked up a fucking butterfly and said, "Look at this," and yeah, I pulled everyone out, and then had a bomb text without borders. I know one of the guys, John, who's from there, really solid guy. I gave him a phone call. He hopped on a train to come out there and take a look. And yeah, it was fuck.
And these were Russian munitions?
These are Russian munitions from when they were, I'm guessing from when they were first pushing on the city. I mean, by that point they had been pushed back quite a bit. So like we weren't taking, like, they weren't even really hitting it with artillery. It wasn't really even in range for that. But it was just a lot of Russian munitions that had been left behind.
Yeah.
And not properly cleared out of this wood line. And there's a lake at this wood line. There's fucking hiking trails, bike trails. Like, I mean, it was really heavily wooded, but there wasn't a section of that was absolutely utilized by civilians. So when we went there was like another military unit that was doing a fucking landman course. So I'm surprised they didn't get fucked up by anything. I think some of these commanders here have really difficult jobs, because they're taking people that maybe they had like a degree in, I don't know, that maybe they were a nurse, maybe they were a lawyer, maybe they were a paralegal, and maybe they had some kind of education, and they're taking these people and they're putting these people in command positions as like company commanders, and these guys aren't not experienced or qualified enough. I think the idea is because they have some education, they might fit well in the position. They just don't. Being a dentist doesn't equate to knowing tactics.
Yeah. So what was then your moves following that?
They canceled the training. The idea was for that rotation to be with us for a few more days before they went back to the front to replace their sister unit. Their sister rotation was supposed to come back and we were supposed to train them. That never happened. Our rotation went back out to the front. Sister unit stayed on the front. Russia started pushing hard on the city, and it was a lot of back and forth through those villages. Those villages where maybe we'd hold it for a day or two. Our artillery just was a little bit more powerful, 1 or 2 more days, and then their artillery would fucking hit us, and they'd take the village for a few days. And so that entire time in that region, it was just back and forth in villages. You never really knew which village was held by who. You could go in when we got those M777s. That made a really big difference. They started utilizing those in that region, and the accuracy and the effectiveness definitely went up, and you could notice a difference. But it's still kind of the same thing. Like, they take the village, and then Ukrainian forces would hold the village until they started getting shelled, and then they'd pull out of the village, and then it would just be a constant cycle until that push. When we end up pushing Kharkiv, um, that's when it didn't really matter. We took the village, and we kept the village. We didn't. It was easier in ways than it had been because they planned on leaving. The Russian forces planned on leaving, getting out of there. So they wasn't waiting for that counterattack the next day or that same night.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what they'd do. If they lose a village, we had access to the village that night or early the next morning. They just pummel that village with artillery, and then everyone would fuck off that was there because you can't shoot artillery. AK is not very effective against it.
Yeah. And you're part of those offensives?
I went on a few different operations with them. I was working with a rocket team that was going in trying to identify equipment. I hit that equipment for Ukrainian infantry to push into those villages without having mechanized obstacles to encounter. And then I took three rounds to my plate carrier, and I shattered my foot. So that kind of ended that for me for a while.
So can you talk us through that operation where that happened for you?
Yeah. We came through this village, got to a tree line. There's kind of a berm on the other side of this tree line, and we had thrown a drone up. That drone had identified what we thought was a piece of equipment back there. And so we started pushing forward. We couldn't get a lock on it from the building that our guys had stayed in. With the tree lines and then that berm in the way, you couldn't lock on it. And we're pushing up this berm, and bam! I don't really know what direction it was from or where it came from, but I saw a dude's head pop up over the ridge, and then his head went back down, and then I was trying to locate that guy, and the first two hit me, knocked me back. I don't know where the third one came from, but it had just barely hit the top of my plate carrier, just barely skimmed my actual plate. And there's a lot more Russians than there were Ukrainians. We pulled back. I thought that was it. That was definitely a situation. I thought I was done. I wasn't, fortunately. Threw all my shit in the back of the truck, opened the door to get in, and truck took off before I could get in. My fucking foot got ran over. So I shattered my foot too.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, that was a real shit day, and that took me off operations for a bit. Actually, since then, I haven't been on any operations. Currently, I'm working on sorting that out. I'm going to be signing a new contract. The majority of my time fighting was without contract. I actually haven't signed with the International Legion, and I have not signed. Actually, I haven't signed any contracts. Just put it that way.
So you say you haven't signed. So you're there just as a volunteer with a gun. Like you're not signed on with anyone.
Yeah, I haven't actually signed on with anyone.
And how does that
Yeah,
legally work?
trying to get me in trouble over here, Willie.
I'm not. I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
No, no. I don't know. I don't know how the
Right.
legalities of that work. I know that that it's not that way anymore. If people are wanting to come over here and start operating, you are absolutely going to need a contract. Back then, it was one of those situations where you can work with a unit and you can teach the guys just basic ready up drills, basic formations, and like train these guys as much as you can before they go out. Build the trust of that team, build the trust of the command, and then when they essentially when they go out, you just go with them.
Yeah.
They give you their blessings to go with them because you're a reliable asset to that group. The commanders want you there because the commanders know that you have the experience and knowledge that you can continue to share with their guys, which is going to give their guys the best chances of the best outcome. And there's quite a few different guys and groups that would go to different units and train those units and then go out with those units. So it wasn't just myself that did that. There was quite a few others that had as well. The nice thing about that was because of all the bullshit and the Legion to begin with. And there was a lot of drama involved in the Legion. A lot of people saying to stay clear. So a lot of people did that, and the Legion still has its flaws that they're trying to work out, but it seems like it's getting better. Today, if I want to, and I tried, go back to other units that I've worked with previously without contract, they won't take me anymore.
Right.
They won't take anyone without contract. So now I'm in the process of signing a contract with a unit out here.
Right. So if you're non-contracted and you get like your ankle got shattered and injuries, or if you got killed, what was then the sort of go from there? Like, what was their obligation to you?
Well, Willie, there wasn't. There absolutely was no obligation to me, and I learned that when my foot got fucked up. I was at a hospital for 2 days until they found out I wasn't contracted, and then I wasn't in the hospital anymore. So that was something that I naively didn't really think about going into that situation. I didn't weigh out I was stupid. I was stupid for doing it, to be honest. It's you're adding a lot of risk um, to yourself. I mean, the commanders are taking on a lot of risk because if something happens to you and they're responsible for it, and it wasn't done the legal process, that can get them in trouble. A lot of these units were TDY units, so having any kind of Legionnaire or any kind of foreigner get assigned to a TDY unit, not likely. I think that's the reason why, out of desperation, a lot of these commanders would take that risk. But yeah, if anything happens to me without a contract, there's nothing that they can do for me because I didn't do it the legal. I didn't do it the legal way.
Yeah. So you did your ankle and you went to hospital, and 2 days later they were like, "You're not covered. Get out." Or
essentially, it's like, hey, we can't see you here. It's a military hospital, and you don't have paperwork.
right.
I
Did you
mean,
then get further treatment at the civilian hospital, or
no, I ended up spending a few weeks in Sweden actually. I went for about 2 weeks into Sweden and stayed there, laid up for a bit. I got a new pair of boots and I just cinched the boots tight on my feet and fucking walked it off. It healed all right. So, but
fucking grunts?
yeah, I went to a hospital in Sweden, mind you. I did try to get medical treatment there, but you spend a long time in a foreign country fighting, and you're not contracted. If you're not contracted, you don't get paid.
Mm.
So I've never been paid in country for fighting. I've never been paid in country by this country. I've never received anything from Ukraine financially. So when I went to that hospital in Sweden, me not being Swedish, they would not see me unless I paid them. I didn't have any money to pay them. So that, yeah, that was kind of, I didn't really have any other options. I wasn't very big on the idea of having my foot put in a cast either, because that would have definitely limited my mobility even more. So I just kind of took it easy for a bit, let my foot heal up, and then I did take about a month and a half off. I did go home November, December. Had some personal family issues that I had to take care of, and then yeah, then I came back.
You can get concerned about the legalities of returning to the States with being a non-contracted fighter within a country.
Yeah, so when I went to the States, I got pulled into a room and asked questions, as do I think everybody that's an American citizen that has Ukraine stamped on their passport. Where have you been? What have you been doing? Who have you been working with? And I politely told him that I had been a lot of different places. Said I was on vacation. I went to Finland because I had a connecting flight in Finland. I was in Poland, Germany, and then Ukraine. And when they asked me about Ukraine, I said, "Hey, look, I was on vacation." They said, "Do you want to Ukraine for vacation?" I was like, "The Carpathian Mountains are beautiful." I was nice about it. They were nice about it. They understood. Like, yeah, they wanted to ask me questions and they wanted to pry, but legality wise, I didn't commit any crimes. I there's not much that they can really do. They can't really hold you for too long. Um, they can question you for a little bit, but then after that, they have to let you go. Unless you came to Ukraine to do corrupt and dumb shit,
Yeah.
and you're just an overall shitbag. They don't really give you too hard of a time. The guys understand. The guys understand that they'll kind of cut you a break and just let you be. I mean, I wouldn't want that job of fucking interrogating people that are coming back from fighting in Ukraine. You got all these guys exhausted. Things they're trying to sort out in their own heads. Fucking being home after being here, and then having this fucking Joe Schmo come up and start asking you about your whole fucking life the last year.
Mm.
Some
For
people
sure.
take it, yeah.
What do you think would have happened though if you were working out there and got killed? Like, what obligation then does, I guess, Ukraine and the US has sort of no obligation to you? They're not to sound like a
There
prick,
would
but yeah, because that's what I thought. I'm like,
no.
I'm working as a journalist there. If I get slotted, then no one's got any obligation to come get Willie. Like, and that's one of the risks you take. But at least I'm a little bit less at risk than an actual fighter.
You're absolutely right on that. If I was killed, there is no obligation. There's no obligation from the state. There's no obligation from Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it's the embassy has already put out multiple warnings and multiple statements saying that American citizens should not be in Ukraine. And pretty much, if you stay in Ukraine after this warning, you're on your own. You're taking your own risks, and we will not come in and we will not save you. So, yeah, I would have been. I don't know. I think I would hope some of my guys that I was with would fucking find a pretty tree or something to fucking plot my body under. Outside of that, yeah, there's really no obligations.
It's a weird war, man. It's because you've got that on both sides, of course. You've got guys who are fighting for Ukraine on contract or not on contract, and you've got guys fighting for Russia on and not on contract as well. It with Wagner PMC, with typical Russian Federation units. It's such a weird thing of that element of this conflict. Yeah.
It's not a war that I think any person that like studies wars would even have been close to understanding the process of how this war would take place. So like you put the scenario Russia, Ukraine, you ask any of these fucking PhD guys how that war is gonna go. Ukraine would have been gone already. Nobody thought that $3,000 fucking Mavic drones were gonna have such a massive effect. Civilian market drones were gonna have such a massive effect on this war. It's like taking the fucking 80s and 90s equipment, and the fucking mash is just, it's weird. I don't I don't know how to explain this. It's like, oh, that's a Humvee, and I don't know what the fuck that is, but that thing is way older than me. Way older than me.
Yeah, it's a weird mix up of the war. You've got the whole West backing through Ukraine, and versus Russia, who's really them, Iran, and that's about it. But yeah, it's a weird one to have seen it gone. And I know I was there on the initial days, and I was like, this is not going to last more than a few days. Of course, I don't have insight to any of the military intelligence, but from outside looking in, you're like, Russia's second biggest army in the world.
There was a lot of governments and a lot of countries that had a lot of reasons why they didn't want Kiev to fall. There was a lot of really, when I first got here, I was planning on signing a contract. There was a lot of guys that came over here from various countries that were coming over here with objectives. Don't let Kiev fall. I think the U.S. and Western forces have way too much invested into Ukraine to allow Ukraine to fail. Essentially, is what I'm getting at. Like, to be brutally honest about this war, like the West is absolutely providing support to Ukraine, but they're at the same time, like, it's a massive benefit. This war is a massive benefit to the West. I mean, it's massively profitable for the West. So that's why this war is continuing to be fought. They could have easily sent in the kind of equipment needed to make this war go by real fast. They didn't. It's a very cheap price to pay to deplete one of your largest adversaries' military forces without dropping a single drop of U.S. blood or other Western countries' blood. They're okay doing that with lives that aren't from their country. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that Ukrainians know this. They absolutely know this. But they don't have any other option but to accept the help, what little help they get, with the hope that it'll be enough to fight off this Russian invasion into their country.
So you're down the same path as this is essentially in many regards, but between Russia
It's a
and the
proxy
US, at
war.
least, a proxy war, and
Absolutely a
a
proxy war.
Ukrainian fight for survival caught in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. I think there was a lot of corruption happening here in Ukraine before this really kicked off. Um, there was a lot of U.S. politicians. There was a lot of people in foreign countries that were profiting massively on uh, corruption here in Ukraine. Um, so I think too many people put their hands in a cookie jar that they shouldn't have had their hands in, and it got to a point where somebody was somebody said fuck it. Putin said fuck it. I'm just going to go for it. Putin made a really stupid decision and said I'm just gonna take it. He wanted to take Kiev. This is my personal opinion. I don't have enough to back it up, but I think he wanted to take Kiev because he was tired of having his fucking oil. And 90% of his GDP comes from his export of oil, if I'm not mistaken, oil and gas. And that was getting fucked with in Ukraine by shell companies and corporations because why not Ukraine? It's the most corrupt place. No one's going to bat an eye. So there's a lot of people, from my understanding, profiting off of that. They piss off Putin. Putin said, "Fuck it, I'm going to take the city," so they stopped doing it. When leaders of a country get to a point where they no longer think or care about the consequences of their actions or who that's going to affect, you run into situations like this where 18-year-old kids are literally having their entire adult lives stolen from them because they don't have a choice, right? All these foreigners that come to this country with prior knowledge and prior military experience and prior backgrounds that have a good understanding of what's going on. We all come here and we all take into account the risks. For the most part, maybe we don't think through them all the way, but we have a good understanding of what those risks are when we come here. And we have a gravy ride in the sense that all operations that we go on in the Legion or with contract, they're all volunteer basis, right? You can refuse an operation. Ukrainians can't. You get a lot of people that say, "Oh, thank you so much, you're a hero." No, the hero is that 18-year-old that was making coffee yesterday that's now sitting in a fucking trench with an AK, knowing that he's not fucking experienced enough to be there. We came here with that fucking knowledge. We came here with that experience. We came here with that understanding. I've never met so many people, even proxy war or not, corruption or not, the Ukrainian people by far. I don't think the U.S., if they were in a scenario like this, American citizens would be as strong as Ukrainian citizens are in this fucking war. They're not. These guys aren't dumb. They understand what they're walking into. Like for everybody that's sitting at home on their couch, fucking playing video games, like it's a reality that our generation and the generation coming behind mine never thought possible. It is, and it's fascinating to see. It's fascinating to see the will and the courage that these Ukrainians have. Give me a lot of hope in humanity again.
Do you have any empathy for the same young men on the other side who, they don't have a choice in many regards and are put on the front line in a little green man uniform and are sacrificing for another ideology of a proxy leader?
Well, yeah, To an extent, definitely. The conscripted men from Russia into the Russian military that have been dragged out of their villages, forced to put on a uniform, maybe handed an AK and sent into a fucking trench system. Yeah, that fucking sucks, dude. I really, really hope you fucking surrender because that's the only chance you got, bud. It's not fair. It's fucking brutal. It's not fair. Like, it's the same thing. 18-year-old kid has no choice. Fucking had aspirations to have a wife and kids and a fucking sports car and a nice job and start a family and go skiing. It's gone. So yeah, I definitely have empathy for that situation. Um, uh, it's really difficult because what's different between Russian conscripts and Ukrainian conscripts is it's Russian conscripts in Ukraine, not Ukrainian conscripts in Russia. So yeah, I think there's a lot of death, a lot of death that is absolutely fucking pointless. I think they're throwing bodies because there's just bodies to throw, and it shouldn't be that way. Talked to this before I came over here. I talked to this old hippie guy and a surplus store because I was trying to get a few more things, and he was telling me he's like, I know how to end all wars. It's very simple, and I thought this was fucking hilarious but genius. Whenever a country wants to go to war with another country, what you do is you take the elected leaders of those countries, you put them in a fucking ring, like the Roman Empire. You put them in a fucking ring and you let them fight it out. And then you'll have the crowds of both countries sitting there watching to see who wins. Watch how fast war doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a nice thought of that, and I've always thought if young men just refuse to fight, like I've met young men from all over the world from all different backgrounds. Young men are just young men, man. An 18-year-old, I don't care what if he speaks Pashtun, Dari, Russian, Ukrainian, English, German. Young men are young men. They care about fucking and fighting and making a bit of money, and that's about it. I've always thought, imagine if young guys just like fuck it, we're just not doing that. Um, but if sadly, it's not going to ever happen. It's happened for since we were throwing stones at each other, and it'll continue to happen until we. And my personal thought is until we, exhaust the globe of every living thing at the end. We're just fucking animals doing it. But the amount of blood drawn in this war for no one's given me a good enough reason for anything. And people will say, "Oh, you're justifying things," and I don't justify shit. I think everything is unjustifiable in this, and I think that Russia was just as unjustified to come into Ukraine as America was unjust to go into Iraq. And I believe that Putin should hang in the gallows next to Bush and Blair and any other leader. And I have no sympathy for any of those leaders making decisions that spill young men's blood, and young men are just young guys.
Yeah, I don't I don't know how to change the system from the way the system is. But yeah, these I like look what happened in the Middle East. Like the fucking Taliban has more shit now than they did before we got there. They're better equipped with fucking NVGs. They got Humvees. They got fucking helicopters. We left them. We left them with a lot of fucking shit. We left them with enough shit that when this fucking war started, they declared Russia a terrorist state.
Yeah.
Like these guys are like forming up their own fucking military off of our shit that we fucking left behind.
I remember that was the
And
meme of you fucked up when the
yeah,
Taliban declare you a terrorist state.
yeah, that's
But countries obliterated by war tend to bounce back very quickly too. You only need to look at Germany and Japan as, they were our absolute adversary not very long ago, within a generation. It's
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, from the outside and looking at the pretty fucking buildings,
yeah,
but you have fucking hundreds of thousands of families that are going to take generations and generations and generations to fucking bounce back.
oh yeah, of course, of course.
I mean, the the thing that's going to be quite difficult for Ukraine is they're losing all of their young men. Like there's and then this country was developing quite well. Um, there's a lot of unfinished skyscrapers. There's a lot of very modern buildings. There's like this country was growing through the corruption. They were still growing, and those iron workers, those welders, those construction workers, the carpenters, the farmers, the like all of these blue collar, right? Blue
Yeah,
collars industry, yeah. All these blue collar workers are there's going to definitely be a need for them after this war is over, and those there's going to be a lot of openings. So in that sense, yeah, countries do bounce back. It'll take a little while, but they'll find people to fill those positions. That the emotional damage, the suicide rates, the spousal abuse, the divorce rates, the single parent homes, whether it be from the husbands dying in conflict or whether the husbands taking their lives after conflict, to abusive relationships, to the there's so much on the family side and the emotional side of things that aren't even thought about when it comes to the consequences of a war, what a war will do to a society.
yeah,
Yeah, these guys aren't just dead. That's sad. They're in a grave now. Everyone moves on. This has very, very lasting effects on the families. It's going to have a lasting effect on the children who are now growing up with a single mother in a country that is extremely corrupt and you know people in this country aren't all very well off. This is a average salary is like 300 to 500 US a month, if I'm not mistaken, and their economy is going to go. Economy is taking a big hitting here.
And it hasn't really, the actual effect on the economy hasn't actually been shown at all yet, because it's been inflated by a number of other Western
Yeah,
sanctions currently. And one of the big things I talk about that is completely unspoken of is Ukraine had a very low replacement rate, birth replacement rate, even before the conflict. And that, with young men leaving, the huge exodus of refugees into the EU, that's a big problem. And if a husband has died at war and your wife and kids are, in the EU, given accommodation, given a salary, given what, why would you come back? It used to be, and no, it's like we forget a lot of stuff. It used to be a bit of a meme of a Ukrainian bride. People wanted to leave Ukraine in seek of a better life somewhere else. And saying that now, people jump on me and you're a Russian bot. No, that's just it. It was just like that. Why would they come home? There's going to be this huge exodus of people, and your white collar workers. You know as well as I that a lot of white collar guys have paid their way out of the front line. They've given money and they've gone to Europe somewhere, the EU, paid money and they don't have to fight. Yeah, it's a big problem going forward, and people won't speak of any corruption. And I'm very glad you brought it up. And what is the foreign investment going to look like? What is the rebuild going to look like? And Ukraine has to win the war. And I'm not sure what your thoughts are on where this war is going to go, but nothing's guaranteed. There's no guarantee of any of this yet.
I mean, there's a few things there. Like one, where this war is going to go. I probably will have a better answer in 2 months.